You think I'm an idiot?
A story can be about anything, but all stories have one thing in common: conflict.
I'm sorry.
I accept your apology.
If there's no conflict, there's no story.
So what's the point?
Therefore, every writer needs to understand how to create this backbone of storytelling. This is how to build conflict.
Consider our fight begun!
Before we start fighting, subscribe to StudioBinder and click the bell to stay up to date on all our videos. There will be spoilers for the following movies. Time to meet our foe. Story scholar Christopher Vogler writes, "Conflict is the soul of storytelling. It's the spark that ignites the narrative fire." Put simply, conflict is when two oppositional forces come into contact. Saying every story has conflict doesn't mean that every story must have a climactic battle or even an argument. Conflict is something that happens when something prevents a character from achieving their goal. Screenwriter Aaron Sorkin describes conflict as the combination of intention and obstacle. He explains, somebody wants something and something is standing in their way of getting it. No two battles are the same, but all conflicts can be put into one or more of three categories: inner conflict, personal conflict, and extrapersonal conflict. Let's dive into these different types of obstacles, beginning with inner conflict. Inner conflict can provide some of the most subtle yet compelling obstacles for a narrative. It refers to when a character must confront problems within themselves that are preventing them from reaching their goals.
You are a toy! You weren't the real Buzz Lightyear, you're an action figure!
By definition, then, inner conflict calls for a multidimensional character. Someone whose interior is complex and filled with contradictions.
Buzz Lightyear, the world's greatest superhero, now the world's greatest toy! Buzz has it all! Locking wrist communicator!
Calling Buzz Lightyear!
Inner turmoil can often come from a character coming to terms with their identity. In Moonlight, Chiron struggles to accept his own sexuality, which results in him putting up a tough exterior that becomes an obstacle to finding companionship.
You don't know me. I don't know you.
Inner conflict can also work in concert with other forms of conflicts. In A Woman Under the Influence, Mabel is clearly struggling with her own demons, but they are exacerbated by the external sexism she contends with.
He's got something in that bag.
Don't be concerned
Yeah,
about
he's
this
going to
bag,
try to imprison
Mabel.
me with something in that bag.
Don't be concerned about this bag.
Am I right?
Don't be concerned
Am
about
I right,
this
Nick?
bag.
Am I right, Nick?
Another common form of inner conflict is the moral dilemma. A famous example can be found in Sophie's Choice, where the protagonist has to decide which of her children to save. Internal conflict often comes from a character's backstory.
The wrong kid died.
In Wild, Cheryl Strayed's backstory provides the primary obstacle she must overcome. As she hikes, director Jean-Marc Vallée cuts to scenes from her earlier life, presenting the sequences as memories Strayed has to reckon with.
What if heroin taught me something? What if all those things I did were the things that got me here? What if I was never redeemed? What if I already was?
In the Planet of the Apes series, Koba's conflict over whether or not to follow Caesar is informed by the cruelty he experienced at the hand of humans.
Human? What?
Human work. Human work!
Internal conflict is ideal for character-driven stories, where a filmmaker is interested in investigating a specific person and their life, rather than an intricate plot. But it can be present in any kind of film. Of course, conflict can also exist outside of a character's own head, as it is in personal conflict.
I'm happy to finally meet you, cousin.
Personal conflict refers to obstacles created by other characters.
This is the way Mufasa looked before he died.
The most obvious version of this obstacle is the antagonist, the person diametrically opposed to the protagonist. Their goal is in direct contradiction with the main character. The story revolves around the protagonist trying to best them.
Your destiny lies with me, Skywalker. Obi-Wan knew this to be true.
No.
Hello, put that phone down. Get me the radio tower. Put it down.
But personal conflict doesn't have to be so black and white. Romance stories, for example, typically make use of the personal conflict between the two love interests.
Hello, lad.
Oh,
You
no,
still
Mr.
awake?
Powers, Mr. Powers, please. I'd appreciate it if you could concentrate on our mission and give your libido a rest.
In Licorice Pizza, for example, Gary and Alana rarely get along.
Actresses get naked in movies all the time. What's wrong with that,
Because
Gary?
there's too much nudity in pictures right now.
Gary annoys Alana, and Alana baffles Gary. But this friction makes their reunion in the film's finale much more climactic. They are willing to overlook each other's perceived shortcomings.
Oh my God.
Personal conflict is also often prevalent in movies focused on family, where different characters who may disagree are forced to interact with one another because they're related.
So what are we gonna do?
Excuse me.
In The Royal Tenenbaums, Wes Anderson examines multiple different personal conflicts between different family members. Chaz's antagonistic relationship with his father,
Hey! Are you listening to me? Yes, I am!
Royal's destroyed relationship with his ex-wife, Etheline, and Richie's forbidden romance with Margot. These conflicts, in addition to the numerous conflicts with family friends, work together to create a kaleidoscopic story which examines the very nature of family.
Objection, Your Honor. Damn it.
Why don't you leave the objections to me, Royal?
Because I started the corporation when I was a minor, so my father was the primary signatory on most of my accounts. He also stole bonds out of my safety deposit box when I was 14.
Workplace stories can take a similar approach to personal conflict, relying on the obstacles that arise when different types of people have to work together, whether they like it or not.
Hello, Peter. What's happening?
The Office, for example, uses personal conflict to propel nearly every episode. These are characters who would go out of their way to avoid each other if they didn't have to work at the same company.
This ab workout is specifically designed to strengthen your core. Sorry.
Even friendship can provide a source of personal conflict. Two characters may largely be aligned, but under pressure, cracks may form, which result in opposing viewpoints.
Now, so far, we have what appears to me to be a series of victimless crimes. What
about the toe? Forget about the f***ing toe!
In Booksmart, for example, Molly and Amy are best friends. But things come to a head during their night gone wrong. Amy is frustrated that Molly always wants to control her life.
You force me to do whatever you want to do.
This conflict allows for Amy and Molly's friendship to be deepened in the end.
I'm sorry I'm so controlling. I just can't imagine my life without you.
Sometimes, however, obstacles are provided by something larger than another person. This is referred to as extrapersonal conflict.
Joe! Bill! It's coming! It's headed right for us!
Extrapersonal conflict is any obstacle that comes from something outside of a character or group of characters. A common source of this kind of obstacle is nature, where a character has to contend with forces far outside of their control. In Into the Wild, Alexander's goal is to live in the wilderness, and the conditions of the Alaskan frontier provide the challenges. Another popular form of extrapersonal conflict is society itself. Typically, this approach allows a filmmaker to examine a cultural issue. In To Kill a Mockingbird, for example, Atticus must combat racism.
And so, a quiet, humble, respectable girl who has had the unmitigated temerity to feel sorry for a white woman has had to put his word against two white peoples.
Whereas inner or personal conflicts can be pushed aside or resolved. Extrapersonal conflict is often used to create an immovable obstacle. Something like a superstorm must simply be persevered through, forcing characters to change, whether they like it or not. A filmmaker doesn't have to choose just one of these three kinds of conflict. In fact, many movies utilize all three at once. Let's take a look at one such film, Hereditary.
Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother!
Ari Aster's horror film examines familiar dynamics and grief, using all three layers of conflict.
I wanted to make a film that served as a vivid family drama before any of the horror elements were even thought about. And I wanted all of the scary stuff to grow out of what we established in the first hour of the film.
You know you were her favorite, right?
First, there is the intense inner conflict Peter experiences after the accident. His guilt is overwhelming and weighs on him for nearly the rest of the runtime. There is also personal conflict. Annie and Peter have simmering conflict before the accident.
Well, that's a crock. I'm just asking if you're drinking.
Which provides kindling for the explosive arguments they have after the tragedy.
All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that f***ing face on your face!
This conflict mirrors the tension between Annie and her mother. The two versions of intergenerational conflict add to the dark, familial themes throughout the film.
And then she lived in our house at the end, before hospice. We weren't even talking before that. I mean, we were, and then we weren't. And then we were. She's completely manipulative, until my husband finally enforced a no-contact rule, which lasted until I got pregnant with my daughter.
And finally, there is the extrapersonal conflict, the supernatural forces which the family has to contend with. These obstacles externalize the conflicts that are already present, while delivering on the scares of the movie.
Charlie?
In the end, Ari Aster addresses all three layers of conflict. Peter has to address his guilt head-on, while discovering an intergenerational coven that speaks to the personal conflicts that have plagued the family and explains the supernatural phenomena.
You writing?
Every story needs some sort of conflict, because every person confronts obstacles throughout their life. It might be an epic showdown or a feeling of ennui. Whatever it is, conflict will drive your narrative from start to finish. Overcome whatever obstacles are stopping you from writing, and get started on your next film with StudioBinder's pre-production software